everyone, today I would like to show you and give you a review on something that recently I have found to be near and dear to me, the Dreamcast controller. Now, this is what a Dreamcast controller would probably look like if you had bought one still in the package, or you bought a controller that did not come with any accessories. So let's talk about this controller. One of the first things you'll notice is this controller looks very different than other controllers. Why? This cord is down here, and here's the end of the plug over here. Standard video game controller plug. You just hook it in the front of the Dreamcast in one of the 4 slots, and then the controller is now plugged up. Now, you may be wondering, why would they ever think of doing this? Which, at first, I always thought, why the heck did they do this? It's a stupid idea. You lose this much cord at least, and with many old controllers not having very long cords, this is a whole lot of cord to lose. You know what I mean? So here is why. Up here on the top of the Dreamcast controller they have slots. These slots were designed for the VMU, which is basically the memory card for the Dreamcast. And you can put in 2 VMUs or any kind of third-party memory cards. But the way the controller was designed in mind was you would put a VMU in this front slot, because there's also this window here. It's probably also the first thing you notice that in the controller cord. Well, probably this first, then the controller cord. Is that this has an open screen, or has an open window. And what you would do with that is you would take a Dreamcast VMU, and you would slide it into the top of the controller, face down, head first, into the controller. It would lock into place, and now you have a screen right here in the middle of your Dreamcast controller. Pretty nifty. Now on the back, or on the back slot, you could also put another memory card, or some games used a microphone peripheral and others, but the main thing I use it for is a rumble pack. This is a Mad Catz third-party rumble pack. And this just slides in the same way. Push it in, locks into place, and now you have a memory card and a rumble pack, which is known for the Sega called their rumble pack the jump pack, unlike the N64's rumble pack. So let's get a little bit more into it. Now the other thing you might notice is, wouldn't it be kind of annoying to have all this cord hanging? So they fixed that by adding this little slot here in the back of the controller where you actually take the cord and you slide it into that slot and it stays in place. See? And now that saves you having to fumble with this cord that you would typically think would be hanging down. Problem is, I have a third-party rumble pack, and this cord actually comes into contact with the locking mechanism. So that kind of stinks, but if I bought a Sega jump pack, it's likely it wouldn't do that. So let's get into what the actual controller is all about, and why I think this is such a fantastic controller. Well, for starters, you have, just a kind of average thumbstick. The joystick's alright. I feel it gives you a good amount. It's very responsive, and it's great for games that I prefer to use the joystick in, but in most games I use the D-pad, and there's a reason for that. But the joystick's pretty nice. It's kind of textured on the top, but it's not rubber, it's plastic, so your finger does kind of slip around a little bit, like if you're playing Sonic, but you can just adjust your finger in a manner that, it wouldn't slip as much. But the joystick's not bad. Another thing you might notice is this, it only has a start button. There isn't a select button. But in the past, Sega consoles have only had a start button anyway, so when they made the Dreamcast in '99, no surprise that you only had one start button. But here's the big thing that was different, was, in all of Sega's history, we had kind of grown attached to the 6-button design. But there is only 4 buttons here. And that's kind of disappointing. The Master System only had 2, but the Genesis had 3, and then they designed this 6-button controller which had the 6-button layout. Then when they did the Saturn controller, there was a 6-button layout, but at the Dreamcast, they only have the 4. There's a couple things that I love about these buttons and I don't love about these buttons. The buttons are very responsive. They sound like they should behave, and I love that about them. But there's one thing that I don't like about these buttons that I prefer, say, on an N64 controller with the C buttons. Most people don't like console shooters that don't have the dual joystick design. But personally, I love the N64 for its joystick games because of the C buttons. And some games try to use this fashion as your WASD. So this would be forward, this would be back, this would be left, this would be right. Walk forward, walk backward, strafe left, strafe right. And compared to that of the N64, there's a whole lot of space in here, which normally on the N64 you'd only have this much space for the buttons. I mean, the blue button would be practically here in the middle of these. X buttons would just kind of squish in. So you can kind of move your finger a lot easier. Like you just barely tilt your finger and you're now, strafe running or whatever. So I don't like the base buttons as much for that. Because, but I mean, there are many games that use the WASD walking format anyway. Now here's one of my favorite parts of the Dreamcast, the D-pad. Now this is a little bit less comfortable in a sense than the previous Sega D-pads. A lot of people liked the Sega Genesis D-pad. Personally, I don't like it, but many people claim that the ultimate D-pad ever is the Sega Saturn D-pad because it is large and it's comfortable. It's like it's kind of rubbery and it's really comfortable to use. And although this is plasticky, I think the way that it just kind of wobbles around, like it doesn't wobble a lot, but the way that it just kind of flows. It's a little concave, but just the way that it just kind of flows in your finger makes it very comfortable to use. Especially, the main games you'd be playing on a Dreamcast would be like puzzle games or shoot 'em ups or fighting games, which I mean those are fantastic games for the Dreamcast. So that's pretty freaking cool. I find that this is a great D-pad. And one of the main things that was so great about the Dreamcast controller is that it had triggers. And what the triggers offer you is you still get a button, essentially. You can still get a button. I mean, this is a button, that's a button, this is a button, that's a button, this is a button, 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 button. But also, as with here you have the digital buttons. If you press this is a button, and that's it. So this can be made, depending on how the programmers want to use the game, this can be used as a button, or this can be used as an analog button. Which means, and one of the main, what I've seen is that, there's a whole lot of racing games on the Dreamcast. And there's nothing you'd want more than to have analog acceleration and analog braking, and the Dreamcast gives you that. Now these triggers are they're not bad. At first you just feel like you don't get nearly as much range as you would with, say, an Xbox controller, but I really like these controllers. I really like these triggers once you get used to them, and I feel they're very responsive, so that's a great thing. So, I mean, if you're just cruising through, you gotta dive through that corner, you just, tilt that stick, and just wail on the gas, slam on the brake, get around that corner, get going again. So, in the end, I think the Dreamcast controller is a fantastic controller. It does a couple things different than what Sega's done in the past. Losing the 6-button format is kind of whack. Mainly because that would have gave the developers many more buttons. I mean, compared to its competition, you had like the N64 controller had the joystick, the D-pad, both trigger buttons, and a Z trigger. I mean, both shoulder buttons and a Z trigger, and it had B and A and 4 C buttons. And the PS2 controller had 4 shoulder buttons, all that, and it had 2 joysticks once they remade it with the DualShock. So it definitely is. It definitely has less buttons, less methods of input, which kind of hurts the controller. But I mean, from the way that the designers had to use the controller, And from what, you know, the Sega's platform is designed for, fighting games, shoot 'em ups, and, you know, racing games, these are fantastic. It's a fantastic controller. So if you have your Dreamcast and this makes you want to pull out your Dreamcast, go pull it out. Go try out this controller. Go play with this controller again. Just relive that moment. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you later. Peace.